There we go.
It's
folks. Hello. Welcome to Tavern Chat, but really it's the weekly Talking Crit with Bad Mike and Tenkar. And for those of you listening at home on the podcast side of things, this is being recorded live on YouTube and Facebook. So if you want to abuse Mike and myself, most Wednesday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern, you can find us pulling crap like this.
Please abuse us, by the way. We actually love the comments, seriously. The comments are hilarious.
They bring out the best of us.
They do. We have to think on our feet then. That's what we're best. You know, Eric was a cop and I don't know what I did. But anyway, we're great on our feet. We think on our feet. Actually, I got first place in extemporaneous speaking all 3 years of high school. So I'm great at thinking on my feet too.
All right, before we even hit the main topic, what the hell is
extemporaneous speaking? I'll do it really quick. Extemporaneous speaking is you're given a topic, you have 5 minutes to prepare, and you have to deliver an informative speech on that topic. It cannot be made up stuff. So you have this little file box that you carry around with you. It has all the major events of the day, and they'll ask you a current event. They'll say, tell us about blah, blah, and you get 5 minutes to prepare your speech, and you present like I can't remember how long it was, 5-10 minute speech, and it has to be all factually correct, and it has to be informative. And then they grade on different things. I don't know if they still do it anymore. This is 40 years ago.
I never even heard of it.
But I was great. I was great at it. I got first place all 3 years. Because I'm a bullshit artist. I mean, that's the whole thing. Because sometimes I'd go, I don't think this guy's going to fact check me. So, well, what do you think about Jimmy Carter's blah, blah, blah? Let me tell you that. And I would just bullshit. And I'm like, that sounds
all right. I remember having to do something like that in one of my, I think it was history class, probably in like 10th grade. I did it on Herschel Walker of the New York, New Jersey Generals, right? Yeah.
He was a Dallas Cowboy too at one point.
Yes. And it was one of those things where I literally read the article right before class started, did my speech. I was told I did very well. And then the kid who I borrowed the paper from was like, that's fucking bullshit. Look how well I prepared, because
Herschel's one of my heroes, because without Herschel, Cowboys wouldn't have won those 3 Super Bowls in the 90s, because they traded Herschel. I don't know if you remember the big trade that happened when they traded Herschel Walker, who was the best player of the Cowboys, for pretty much every draft pick of the Vikings for the next 3 years. Or the first, second, and third round draft pick for 3 years, and that's who we drafted to basically have our Super Bowl run. So I love you, Hirsch. And by the way, still does 1,000 push-ups and 1,000 sit-ups every day. I saw an interview with him recently.
God damn.
Yeah, and he's got to be what, 60 something, 70.
Well, my father's 77. He still bench presses.
Jeez.
I'm like, you're out of your mind.
I'm lucky if I can bench press this.
I've got my wine in my wine spritzer.
I might have a little MM in my drinky poo here. All right, well, let's get this started.
All right, let's get this party started.
Yeah.
So before we hopped into this, we were like, should we retouch upon the Weiss and Hickman Dragonlance saga? And here I will give credit where credit is due. I rag on N-World an awful lot. And I rag on Morris a lot. Because the love there goes far and deep. But
yeah, we give Morris a hard time. But
I'm going to give credit where credit is due. He probably has the most informative article on the Dragonlance lawsuit that I have read to date. And work went into it. Russ did the work, and it's under his byline, and it's good. And it really it breaks things down a lot better than the legal paperwork did, which I am not a lawyer. I did read it, and I was only able to glean certain things from it. But Morris did a much better job. And apparently what it is that in this case, the work wasn't being done for Wizards of the Coast. Weiss and Hickman were licensing the IP, the Dragonlance IP, from Wizards to be published by Penguin. Penguin gave them an advance. With that advance, they paid the licensing fee to Wizards of the Coast. And the tortuous interference part is because they found out that Wizards of the Coast was directly dealing with Penguin Random House to make things more inclusive.
They basically went around the back of. So, I mean, I guess the scenario could. We're never really going to know because, as we said before, we're never going to hear anything from WotC, and Hickman and Weiss have said their piece. So, if you look at kind of between the lines, what happened was all the changes that were Weiss and Hickman were asked to do by WotC. At some point, they went around behind their back to Penguin Random House. And I don't know what was said. Maybe we can't work with these people. I mean, we've given them every chance to alter their manuscript, to change, because it gives some examples of what they were asked to do. And there was something about a love potion, something about a name change for a character, diversity issues. And at some point, they said, we can't deal with these people. And they went around their back to Penguin Random House. And that's what is considered torturous interference.
Right. So I don't know if Penguin Random House was like, hey, our way to back out of this deal is to have the licensee back out of the deal with the licensor and screw things up. So it's like, yeah, it's I guess in football, would that be like a flea flicker? Totally. Don't look at the hands, because the hands are flinging this to the side.
So this may be messier than we thought in terms of all the people that are involved in this, because I'm sure Random House Penguin doesn't want to be seen as, hey, and because they were paid so they paid the advance out. That may be, so they paid the advance. So I'm assuming they're keeping the advance, because, and I just find it impossible that Penguin Random House would ask for the advance back. But they're apparently keeping the advance. So this is a totally different thing, because they're suing WotC. They're not suing Penguin Random House. And that may be why they're not suing Penguin Random House. They say, hey, we got to keep. Let's keep the advance. So we put in all this extra time, and WotC kind of screwed this deal for us. Let's go after WotC.
Right, because they have two of the three manuscripts are written, and by the way, David Thompson makes a point. He goes, he's never a Dragonlance fan. A few people played it in our RPG club when it was released. Not read the books either. Now, here's the deal. I enjoyed the books. I enjoyed that first trilogy. Was not saying it was high quality, but it was entertaining. Did I like the adventures? No, because they were fucking railroads. Oh my!
But see, we don't understand. They were supposed to be railroads, because you were basically going to enact or redo the same trilogy and walking in the steps of the heroes, except you were the heroes this time, because you basically got to be either Sturm or any of their characters. You got to be those characters, and they had character cards for all of them, and you could change the way things are. Because, I mean, spoiler alert for a 40-year-old book series, Sturm dies at the end of the second book. But if you're playing it, Sturm doesn't have to die, and maybe Tasselhoff dies. I mean, there could be all kinds of things happen. So you're basically supposed to play through the events of that trilogy with the characters. So yes, it was extremely railroady, and that's what people go nuts about. Is it so railroady? But it was supposed to be the whole. I mean, that was the whole point. Was it supposed to be? Yeah, the artwork was David. That was Elmore. That Elmore and Easley stuff was. That was at the height of their game, man. Those guys were kicking it.
And the artwork defined the series, if you ask me. But here's the thing. And you're saying, yes, Tasselhoff could die. Why could Tasselhoff die? Because Tasselhoff was not one of the primary characters. But if Riverwind died, right? Yeah. Then no, she has to survive, because she's pushing that series forward. Or Raceland can't die, right? Because he becomes a god.
Yeah, but it's a tough one.
Yeah. So again, I haven't read these books, and
well, I want to make a confession here in front of my fans. All none of them. Oh, Christopher, you're one of my fans. This is one of my fans right there. I'm his fan too, though. I want to make a confession. I ran the Dragonlance modules back in the 80s, but I ran them with the party I did. We didn't use the Dragonlance characters, and I ran it just straight, not railroady. It was basically they could choose whatever they want to do, and they were fighting a group of dragon cultists. Now, it was basically this cult that worshipped dragons. Well, Forgotten Realms, you have something called the Cult of the Dragon, and basically these are guys that worship dragons, and their number one thing is to try to get dragons to die, and they become Draco liches. And so I ran the series, and if you don't run it as part of the Dragonlance world, it's not. They weren't bad. They had some really good dungeons in there. They had some interesting layouts for some of the dungeons you went here. There's one it's a big dragon mountain thing, and you go through it, and it wasn't bad running it not as Dragonlance. But yes, I can see picking those up and going, what the hell is this? Especially if you're an AD&D first edition player, because this came out during first edition. I can see picking these up and go, what the hell? No, I'm not running this. I'm not running, unless you've read the trilogy and you're just so hooked on it that we're going to replay it exactly the way it was. There's no reason you would want to run those in any way, shape, or form. No, but now you have to understand what Dragonlance. So the reason this has got blown up a ton, not in just the regular or not just online with among fans, but the regular media, is people don't seem to realize this was a huge seller back in the day. We're talking like, I remember picking up one of the paperbacks a few years back, and it was like 40th printing. This is like,
really?
These things went through so many printings. They sold millions of copies, bestseller list. After the original trilogy, Wyson Hickman wrote another trilogy. Then there was another, I want to say about 200 books written in the Dragonlance world.
But let's touching on that. You have to remember, though, this is the same era where, all right, they didn't do much with Gryhawk, but the Forgotten Realms novels, they were putting out stuff left and right, and the paperbacks are a huge reason that TSR went under. Right. Because it was the returns that
that and Dragon Dice and what was
Dragon Dice.
Spellfire cards.
You can still buy Dragon Dice, dude.
They got returned. They were bought in massive amounts by Walden Books and bookstores like B. Dalton, and then they were returned. But I mean, that's a different story for another time, which is an interesting story too.
Yeah.
But anyway, I remember. I mean, the saturation of Dragonlance was so much. I remember in the late '80s going on a date with a girl, just somebody I'd met at the record store I worked at. I remember going to her apartment, and we had talked before, and she'd never mentioned anything about fantasy or D&D. And I walk in her house, and she's got these Dragonlance posters on her wall and a Dragonlance calendar. I'm like, you like Dragonlance? She's like, oh my God, I love Dragonlance. I mean, this is just some random person that wasn't into fantasy. I mean, whatever, but this was just this has saturated the market at the time. Dragonlance was huge. And this is why I know a lot of people are like, oh, I hated Dragonlance, and I don't, who wants to read Dragonlance? It's a huge property. And it's really surprising there hasn't been a movie, a really good movie version made.
Well, there has been a movie made. Remember
the cartoon.
Cartoon. Didn't she voice it? No, it wasn't. I don't even know who she was playing in that.
What's his name? There was a cartoon that what was the name? Male actor. There was he played Raceland. Dang it, I can't remember. But there's
I own it. I've never actually opened up.
It's really bad. It's really bad. But yeah, this is why this is such a big deal, because this is a huge property, and this is something that WotC doesn't want to lose. I think all the cards are aligning that it turns out, I think they were going to release a 5e Dragonlance, because that's the only reason you would have kind of commissioned the original authors to come and write a trilogy, right?
Right, because you're trying to push it. But now, like we mentioned in the last episode of Talking Crit, the focus at Wizards of the Coast has changed. They have decided, and I hate this phraseology. And saying woke, because it's dismissive.
It can mean anything to anybody too.
Yeah. But they have gotten to the point where they feel that they must address the loudest voices, and the loudest voices are not necessarily your fans.
No.
Your fans tend to be quiet. They peacefully take what you give them, and they're happy and they're excited. I mean, when you think about it, when you look at like reviews of anything, if something is really good, how likely are you to review it? And probably not, because it's good, right? If it's average, you're definitely not going to. But if it's horrible, oh, fuck this shit. I'm going to
yeah.
write my little review here, and I'm going to tell them where they can stick it in there.
Right.
So that's why the angry mob, and listen, we learned about that back with the moral majority. We learned about that back when we were kids with D&D, and D&D was Satanism. You didn't need too many voices to get loud about that before they was like, oh well, when we come out with the AD&D 2E, take out the demons and devils because that we're gonna call them what the. But I can't even pronounce what they decided to change.
Tanari and Bayatsu or whatever.
Bayatsu, yeah. Bayatsu, your mother. It sounds like an Italian curse. But
so this is a big deal, and like everybody said, I mean, this is, I've seen so many people post like, oh man, I love the original trilogy. I haven't read the stuff in years. I think this is going to be an attempt to bring a lot of people back in the fold, and for it to go so wrong, it just makes you. I mean, gosh, I really want to be a fly on. I really wish I was a fly on the wall in the meeting when they said we're going to pass on this, because this is really something went really wrong. I mean, I either. And, the blame could be anywhere. I mean, I as much as I love Weiss and Hickman, maybe they just, at a certain point, just said, you know what, we're not changing anything anymore. You've asked us for way too many changes. We're not going to do it. I mean, maybe the changes are reasonable. Maybe they weren't. I mean, I don't know. We'll probably never know. I mean, all we're ever going to hear from is Tracy and Margaret. I mean, we're never going to hear from WotC on this. If we hear anything, it'll be, this is under litigation. We're not allowed to talk about it, yada, yada. I mean, that's all we'll ever hear from them. So something just really had to just crash and burn for this to go so wrong, because this was going to make a lot of money, and it was probably going to launch a 5e Dragonlance, and it was going to put a lot of new eyes on the franchise, and for them just to absolutely just cancel this is very interesting, very interesting.
And it wasn't something that was initiated by Penguin Random House. Right. This came from Woods of the Coast, based upon the paperwork that was filed with the lawsuit, where it's like, and they bypassed us, they bypassed the authors, went right to our publisher and said, we need these editorial changes.
Which I see, I don't know, this is all speculation, because I'm thinking, well, maybe then it was something that bothered Tracy about his faith, because Tracy's a very loyal member of the LDS, and I don't know, but it's all speculation. I mean, that's all we're doing. We're just spit taking here, right? It's all just, but it had to be something that he and Margaret weren't gonna budge on, and WotC said they're not gonna budge. I mean, they're whatever we're asking them to do. Because at one point it mentions they did rewrite 70 pages of the first novel to accommodate changes. So they were accommodating for some things apparently, but at some point there was a limit reached, and they said no, not anymore.
Here, since we're spitballing, and I'm gonna throw this out, because as Morris's article states, they had two completed manuscripts. They had the first book and the second book. And what it looks like to me is that the first book, you don't start your second book manuscript until you've done the changes on your first one, right? Like, you might have an outline, you might have the plot, you might have a first draft, but you don't have a finished copy until you've got a finished copy of the first book. And it sounds to me like Wizards of the Coast convinced Penguin that they didn't have a finished copy of the first book. It was like, no, you need more changes here. You need whatever, for whatever reason.
Sure.
The characters are too evil, and hey, it could be along the lines of what we have going on now with, well, not all orcs are evil, right? It might be something along the line of, well, no, you can't have purely evil races in Dragonlance.
That's what makes me, and that's the people who want to hammer WotC period anyway. That's where they immediately go to, because that's been the story of the year, right? It's just all the absolute missteps that WotC's made. So they want to go there first, because that seems like the logical place to go, is that, well, they ask Margaret and Tracy to do something ridiculously woke. I hate that word too. We need to think of something.
We got to find a new
word. Yeah, we got to find a new word. But I mean, just they made him do something, absolutely like just over the top, and they just said, No, I mean, no, we're not going to do that. We don't care what your audience wants or what you think people want. Now, we're writers and we're writing a book, and we don't have to, we don't want to change things just to make the 10% or the 20% happy. But
Right.
we don't know. I mean, that's like I said, we don't know. I mean, but it had to be something along. That's where you go. That's where you go, right? Because that's
right.
That's what the whole year's been about. Is been making some fans angry with the fact that we're going to kowtow to, what we consider the loudest voices in the room. And some people saying, well, I don't care. It doesn't bother me. And other people saying, well, it does bother me, and they just, it's like they don't really see that they're dividing their audience, that they're pitting fan against fan. It's not good for the product to do.
No, and you don't want to do that. I mean, and this comes on to the fact that part of the downfall of 2E also was the multitude of boxed sets and settings. Mm-hmm. So many settings that you were pitting fans against fans, players against players. There was so much out there that people couldn't play it all. And if you couldn't play it all, then you were putting out stuff for more segmented pieces. They've been much better with 5e.
Well, at one point you had Ravenloft, Spelljammer, Dark Sun, Planescape. I mean,
Birthright.
Birthright. Second. I mean, you had all this stuff, and you weren't bringing new people into the hobby. You were just taking your audience you had and just dividing them up into smaller pieces. You weren't, and that's what they said. They weren't making more money. They weren't bringing other people in. They were the same people that were always there were just doing different things. So you had people that were like, yeah, I play AD&D second edition, but I play Planescape, or I do Ravenloft, or I do Spelljammer. It was very rarely you found somebody that, yeah, I'm in a Birthright campaign, a Spelljammer one, and an Al-Qadim one, and a Ravenloft one. You just didn't see that. And so in the end, it hurt their product because it was not bringing new people into the hobby, which, like I said, makes this kind of funny because they haven't had a Dragonlance in how long. And to just restart the Dragonlance for 5e would have been huge, man.
Oh, my God. That would have been, I mean, listen, the settings that old school fans are clamoring for are Dragonlance and Gryhawk. I don't want to see Gryhawk done because I can't see it done well. I don't see it being done with respect. I mean, maybe if Goodman Games put out one of their retro books where they do the original and then a 5e version, and you have the Gryhawk folio and box set and From the Ashes, and then you have it updated. You know what? Maybe. But otherwise, I just don't see it being treated the way the old school fans are going to want it, and they're the only ones that are going to buy it. They're the only ones that give a shit. Yeah,
nobody that's old school will probably be happy with it. They just need to leave. Gryhawk needs to be left alone at this point, and look at some other properties up there. One of the ones that comes under perennial review is Planescape, because Planescape was such a popular product, but it was kind of nichey and culty, but it was really kind of cool. It's almost like a cyberpunk version of D&D, and you still have a lot of fans of Planescape out there. So I'm surprised they haven't done a lot with that in the last 20 or 30 years. I just think that Planescape will be extremely successful.
David, the only problem with setting it in the San Francisco, Seattle area is, although you do have a body of water, you don't quite have the Naya Dive set up, and the city of Gryhawk. Well, that's got to be like your city of sin, and that's already on the East Coast where I live.
There you go. So anyway, that was a really interesting art. We rarely ever say this, but if you want a little more insight into the brouhaha with Dragonlance, go ahead and check out MWorld. There's an article on October 19th about the Dragonlance, and it really puts out everything pretty well. It has the entire lawsuit info there, and they pull out some various parts of it and tell you, what do you think this means? What does that mean?
Yep.
And so it's very informative article. In terms of just having the facts. I mean, no speculation in there.
And it's broken down into layman's terms. And listen, I've dealt with the law as a cop. one of our 3 main things that we did in the academy, well, 4 if you count physical education,
Right.
but it was law, social sciences, and police sciences. And knowing how the law works, both for criminal and civil law, was important because it tells you what your limits are. But when you look at legal paperwork, and this comes from somebody who's been sued, I got sued as a cop, and I looked at that paperwork, and I was just like, "What the?" And as a cop, they say, "Listen, you're gonna sign it that you've been served. You're gonna forward a copy to the corporation counsel. The city will decide if you're indemnified, and if you're indemnified, don't even think about it until you get called to testify." And 3 years later, I had to make a deposition in a public library with 2 lawyers who didn't take it seriously anyway. I was like, okay. Go figure. So, David's like, Harn is his fantasy world setting, his go-to. Harn details things to a level that I can't treat it as a fantasy setting. It feels more like an actual medieval setting with occasional fantastical trappings, and I just can't. Gryhawk felt magical, okay, and felt magical not in the same way that Forgotten Realms feels magical. Forgotten Realms feels magical in a much brighter, more intense magic. Gryhawk is the average person who might never ever see a spellcaster in their life, but they know they exist. Whereas in Forgotten Realms, everybody's seen Elminster, right? Elminster came by for my birthday party, and it's like, oh. And by the way, my least favorite character in Dragonlance, since we're talking about that, Fizzbane or Fizzban or whatever,
otherwise known as the character there that's gonna fix everything. I hate those kind of characters.
The DMPC.
Yeah,
is basically what it is.
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, it's like okay, like oh, you guys went off the beat. You guys went off the rails. Now I gotta fix it.
Actually, right. I read a few of those Dragonlance, but the ones that came after the Weiss Tankman, and not very good. Not very good. But anyway, so I don't know if we're going to hear if we're going to hear anything about this. This seems like one of those things that's going to be settlement check cut. We don't hear anything else about it. Everybody shakes hands and backslaps, and we move on. But it's going to be interesting if anything does pop up. Well, we will keep keep our eye out and see what we can find out.
Yeah,
I wish we get Weiss and Hickman to talk to us, but there's no reason they would tell us anything.
Yeah, I can see them coming on the podcast. It's like, what can you tell us? Nothing.
Yeah, our lawyers say
can you tell us about the books that you wrote prior? Well, some of what you wrote prior would be covered by the current lawsuit. All right, so can you tell us about the projects you worked on when you were your own company and you licensed Dragonlance? Well, we no longer have that license, and therefore we can't.
Yep. So. What else we got going on besides rehashing Dragonlance unhappiness? Sadly.
Oh well, here's the thing. Believe it or not, it's actually been a relatively quiet week in the OSR.
It has been. Yes.
Now it is Halloween week, and that does mean that it gets to the point where I start saying things like, I think I have the.
Let me see. Hold on. Buy candy to not give to trick or treaters, but actually eat myself. Okay.
Well, isn't that what we always do?
Of course we do. That's why we buy more bags than we need. And we always go, "Oh, I bought 5 bags." No, we all know.
No, I can't even do that, man. Because here's the deal. With I love like my almond joys. I could binge on that, but if I do, my blood sugar is going to spike through the roof.
Oh dear, yeah.
And if I eat the sugar-free candies, I don't leave the bathroom for days. Because
okay, TMI. But hey, there we go.
Yeah, because the erythritol, whatever it is, it's like what was it when like 20 years ago? What was it, Lestra?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, the Alestra. Oh boy. Yeah, that was
this
rough.
food may cause anal leakage.
That was not good.
What
Yeah,
the
the Alestra
hell?
was a rough one.
When your snack of choice may cause anal leakage, that doesn't.
I remember when it was like, oh, these chips all have cholesterol now. There's no cholesterol. Yeah, there's a trade-off, buddy.
Yeah, there is.
Trade-off was not good. No.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, so we're talking about D&D and Halloween. So I knew a friend, or it was a couple actually, and they had a tradition every Halloween. They ran Ravenloft at their house.
Okay.
And they dressed up. He dressed up like Strahd, and she dressed up like, who's the chick that Strahd was like in love with, but she died. She jumped off the top of the castle, and I can't remember all the characters' names. But anyway, so they dressed up like them, and he ran Ravenloft every year, which I thought was a super cool thing to do. This has started like in the 90s, and for all I know, they may still be doing it, but I just thought that was the coolest thing to do every Halloween. And they would just have everybody, whoever wanted to come over and play, they just have them, roll up a character, and we just, or bring a character. We don't care. Strahd's going to probably kill you because it's, Strahd. This is old school Strahd. This isn't new wussy Strahd. Right. I have something to say about that too, by the way. So, because the new Curse of Strahd came out, and I've actually got some info about that.
Oh, do tell me.
Yeah. But anyway, that they used to do that. I thought that was a really great tradition. We don't really have any kind of tradition of running games on Halloween in my house, which kind of is too bad. But I think that is a great tradition to do, to run a game, run a scary game on Halloween. Man, that's great.
I mean, I used what was it? One of the Ravenloft events, the ones where it's basically the Pinocchio ripoff, and the PCs get turned into like puppets in it. Listen, I used to run either a Ravenloft adventure and they weren't one shots, because the one good thing about Ravenloft is if you didn't want to run your campaign in the setting, the Mist could come and steal your players, from wherever they are. It's like, and every year my players would go, shit, fucking Mist again, because it was like
Mist is bad. Mist
is bad.
You go to the bad place.
Yeah, we're gonna get fucked in Ravenloft again. Or I would run a one shot of Call of Cthulhu.
Oh yeah, Call of Cthulhu is a great. That would be a great Halloween game. Oh my gosh, that just gave me some ideas. Yeah, because that's a good one.
I'm going to mention that the Call of Cthulhu starter set, I got mine on Amazon when it first came out. It's like $25. It is an amazing value. It's the newest rule set. It gives you a solo adventure, and then it gives you 3 group adventures, and just run with it, man. It's a blast. You'll learn the rules without even realize you're learning the rules.
Well, the new I was going to say that I just read something on Facebook the other day. Apparently the new Curse of Strahd revamped came out. Now, for those of you that didn't know, Curse of Strahd came under fire because of its portrayal of the Vistani, which is the race kind of modeled on stereotypical gypsy type
the Romani.
Yeah, Romani. And that was considered not very culturally appropriate, so they've changed it. So they came out with the Curse of Strahd revamp, which came in this really cool box. The presentation's amazing. And then I saw some people talking about it on Facebook about Strahd, and they were all griping and saying Strahd is a wuss in 5th edition. And I was like, what is this? So apparently, from people that I trust, if you run Curse of Strahd / Ravenloft in 5e, your characters are going to walk all over Strahd and wipe their feet on them like a bad doormat, because apparently the presentation they have, the version they have Strahd they have in the Curse of Strahd set is very weak and easily defeated, and not up to standard of the original 1st E or even 2nd E version, which is weird. I don't know why. I have suspicions why they would do something like that.
Oh, I pretty much.
I
don't need suspicions.
I don't know why they would do that, because the whole point is Strahd is one of the greatest. I mean, let's face it. Strahd is one of the greatest villains in the D&D universe. I mean, you have Vecna, you've got who else?
Ayus.
Yeah, you got Ayus. You got the Red Wizards of Thay. I mean, you've got the Zentarum, but Strahd is one of the biggest baddies ever, right? I mean, he's a magic user, 18th level magic user / vampire, from what I remember my first edition. So I mean, he's a badass, and plus, while he's in his castle, he can do all these things. And, plus, he's got all these minions everywhere. In the castle, he's got zombies and skeletons and rats and all this stuff. So I mean, you have to go face him on his ground, which is his castle. Right. You're screwed. You're screwed from the word go. And I've run a couple parties through Ravenloft, and it's never gone very well for them. I think both times they've survived. I don't know if they killed Strahd both times, but it was not pleasant for them. They just basically just got their ass kicked up one side of the castle and down the other side. Plus, he can charm you. I mean, there's all kinds of powers that vampires have anyway, without even being a magic user. So supposedly the 5e version, and if anybody wants to email us or let us know any specifics, because I'm probably not buying any WotC stuff ever.
Tankars.tavern@gmail.com.
Tankars.tavern@gmail.com. Let us know if you have the 5th edition version, what you think, because I'm interested. People that I trust have told me this, so I have no reason to mistrust them, but they have said that it is a Candyland version of Ravenloft, and Strahd's a wuss, and any party of mid-level should be able just to slap him around like a little school kid. I don't know I guess you hadn't heard that. So that's what I.
Well, here's the thing. All right. And this is coming from the individual that referred to 5th edition as the Care Bear edition
right.
of the D&D lineage. Uh-huh. Okay. Whereas Pathfinder took the idea of skills and powers and made it like your characters now are infinitely tweakable. And then 4E said, well, we're going to make everybody totally balanced against each other, where even your THAC0 is the same no matter what class you are.
Sure.
To 5E, where it's like, what's the biggest problem in MMOs? Well, in the original EverQuest, when people died, you had to loot your own body. And if you died in that bad area where the spiders were and it was a dark screen, you couldn't find your body, your shit would rot. Right. We want to go exactly the opposite to that. So let's not ever kill PCs. And if we do,
right,
let's give a resurrection spell to 5th level characters to make sure it's never an issue. So when I would run Ravenloft, and not the original, was it I7 or whatever it was, but the actual box set, Strahd was always the big bad evil guy that, as the party thinks they've overcome the great evil, Strahd's overlooking from the hilltop in the back, and he's that great shadow and the looming presence that they know somebody else is pulling strings and they've not gotten there yet. Whereas now it's all right. The best way that old school gamers can liken it to is, do you remember when deities and demigods came out and some of your players went, holy shit, now I can beat Thor. Now I can get Thor's hammer. This is great. That is 5e, where you've now toned the bad guys down and you've toned the PCs up. The idea of putting players up against adversaries that can overpower them went away with, I guess, 3.5.
Which the whole point of D&D, it's a cooperative game that relies on your imagination and power of the mind as much as anything. One of the things I always do with first level parties is I put first level characters up against an ogre, because normally an ogre is going to stomp the hell out of you. So I want to know, how are you going to beat this ogre? Are you going to outthink him? Do you set a trap? Do you try to trick him? I mean, there's different ways to beat him.
Yes.
But I'm just interested to see how the party's going to do it, because if you run into him just so we're all going to run and attack him, he's going to kill you one by one as he crushes you with his fists. So you're forcing characters. Okay, you want to get a character party that's brand new together and make them all sit there and think about how we're going to beat this ogre. Well, the same thing with anything like Strahd. Strahd's too powerful for any one character to defeat on their own. How can we together, even though he's way more powerful than us, how can we all get together and use our skills, be able to defeat him? Now, I found the link in question, and I don't have permission by these guys to say anything, but I'm going to say that Ian McCarty says that because Ian McCarty probably doesn't care. And
Keep going. Keep going, Ian. No, he'd be like, yeah.
Ian McCarty. Oh, crap. Did I just lose it? I just lost it. Let's see if I can find it again. It was pretty funny. Vamp for a second there.
All right.
My friend Eric. And I will find Ian McCarty's hilarious quote that made me laugh so much.
Ian tends to give us a lot of things that make us laugh.
But it was I thought he had a lot of people agreeing with him when he posted his little rant about Strahd. Oh, how did I just lose this? Did I just touch this with my hand?
You probably deleted it, and now it's gone.
It can't delete. It's impossible to delete it.
It's gone for good, Mike.
It's impossible. You can't delete these things.
You know what? You are right.
Here was Ian's quote. I was really disappointed with this adventure. Strahd is a pale shadow of the terror he once was. He gets a lot of agreement. Casey Christopherson. Oh, I'm throwing you under the bus too, Casey.
Well, you're allowed to use a coworker.
Casey agrees and says needs some buffs is mild. 5e can be fun, but it scales weirdly because honestly, I don't believe any of the powers that be play tested anything beyond 10th level. A party of 4 4th level characters could pretty much be anything in a CR that is supposed to be deadly challenged without breaking a sweat. And then he just basically they get a lot of agreement in the thread that Ian also says that storyline's tight, NPCs are memorable and unique. It's just Strahd is like the off-brand outlet version. His stat block, which I looked at after we played it, was pitiful. He needs better attacks and options. I just don't feel he stands up past 8th level for the characters. And so thank you for that unsolicited opinion, Ian. We used without your permission. But it's on a public forum, so we don't really care. It's Facebook, so it's already been stolen by Zuckerberg.
By everybody else anyway. And we'll probably bring Ian and Rocky on one day anyway.
But this is an issue with the 5e. I mean, past Strahd, this is an issue with 5e in that some people, especially older players, have felt like this is the Care Bear version of D&D, and that there's no real terror. There's no real chance you're probably going to lose your character. And so when you have something like, because Ravenloft is probably the closest thing that obviously that D&D has to a horror type setting. How do you have horror when there's really no chance anything bad's going to happen to the characters? Right. How does that create any kind of horror? I mean, look at Call of Cthulhu. Going crazy is like the mildest thing that could happen if you in a Call of Cthulhu adventure. I mean, you can have your soul stolen. You can be melted down to base parts. You can have your head sawed off, your brain taken out of, and stuck in a piece of tin by a MyGo, and then spend the next 500 years, screaming endlessly in the void. I mean, there's terrible things that could happen to you in Call of Cthulhu, and then of course you could also go insane. But D&D has nothing like that because 5e has eliminated any chance that really there's going to be any lasting consequences of any.
Yeah, and that's the damn shame about it. And the other thing about Call of Cthulhu is that my gaming groups, we always ran it as one shot or an arc, 2 or 3 sessions to deal with the story, and then you left it that way. Players could take actions that fit their vision of the character and the story, as opposed to I got to take an action that will allow me to survive, so I can get better, because you don't get better in Call of Cthulhu. You go insane or you go dead.
But we had a long campaign called. We actually ran through Master of the Tip. We ran the whole thing. We could talk about that in the show one time, because that was it remains to this day the best campaign I ever ran in my life of any RPG. We ran a whole campaign of Master of the Tip. We had 2 players. One had never played Call of Cthulhu before. One had never played any RPG ever. And they had the best time. He played an Indiana Jones type character. He goes, "Can I play Indiana Jones this game?" I'm like, "Sure." And so we figured out he was good at the whip and he had a gun. And that's set right in the Call of Cthulhu era, right? The 20s, 40s, right? So they had a blast. Anyway, but so my little brother had a character. His name was I think it was Harold P. Jones. And like you said, you don't really get better. So at a certain point, he had read enough books where his sanity, the highest it could ever go was like 50. And he said, this is never really going to get any better. As I said, no, your sanity will just keep going down and down. So he basically retired and became the professor emeritus of the group. So when they needed to answer a question, they'd run to him and he would have a library, because he didn't, since he'd been through so many adventures and not died, he said, this is a special character because Call of Cthulhu, the life expectancy is very low.
Yep.
And he survived massive. All the time he survived quite a few other campaigns. So he just retired him. But yes, nothing ever about him ever got better. Everything he lost his strength once because he fell in a pit with a bunch of goo and it sucked half his strength down. His insanity was in shatters. So it was it's almost a counterintuitive game in that the thing that you're trying to strive to do is you're trying to save the world, right? You're saving the world, but you're going to end up a mindless, insane, probably dead wreck, but hopefully you've saved the world. Hopefully you defeated the forces of darkness and sent them back for a little bit, but there's nothing at the end of there's no rainbow pot of gold at the end of the rainbow Call of Cthulhu. And D&D doesn't have anything like that, because D&D is built around the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And that's the whole thing. You do this because there's treasure at the end. There's gold. I mean, probably the closest thing we have is maybe lamentation stuff, because lamentation stuff, often you're not getting rewarded. You're just basically escaping with your life, and you should be happy that, you didn't get eaten alive.
Oh, well, unless it's the monolith at the end of time, in which case, whatever choice you make, you're just fucked.
My favorite bad module of all time, because I think James says in the introduction, the only way to beat this module is to walk away.
Yeah, pretty much. And when he says walk away, he means actually walk away from the gaming table.
Yep, and say, we're through. Yeah. We're not going to go here. Okay, well, you made it, because to go in this module was going to be, you're going to die. It's predetermined. You're dead. Once you're in the module, you're dead. So yeah, that's maybe too extreme. But yeah, it's a common complaint about 5th edition, and especially comes forth when you talk about anything that's permanent or horror related. Unless, if somebody has a 5th edition character and you've experienced the opposite of that, let us know, because that's all I've ever heard, is that really you can't die, and there's no permanent effects, and nothing really bad ever happens to you. So sadly, Ravenloft is not a good fit for that.
Well, the Ravenloft setting, I don't know if you remember the Midnight setting for 3rd edition. The best setting that I never ran.
Midnight is a great setting. It is. And it's coming back, by the way, too.
Is it? For 5e?
Coming back. I'm going to, you vamp and I will Google. I just saw something about it.
Because something like that, you'd have to change the default settings to 5e for Midnight to work, because you've got to make it that your characters aren't superheroes. They have to have faults. They have to be able to be at risk. They have to understand that they are fighting the darkness, and their chance of survival is minimal.
Well, Midnight. Imagine Middle Earth if Sauron won. That's basically what Midnight, the setting is. You are characters. You're fighting against darkness. You have no chance of winning. It's too powerful. And so you take victory in small victory. You take your solace in small victories, and you beat the bad guys back where you can. But you're not gonna have one big campaign where you just go and you kick the big bad out of wherever. But that's never gonna happen. But so it's kind of a nihilistic setting in that you're never gonna really succeed. But it's you win these small victories. Maybe you can free this one city. Maybe you can defeat this one villain who's really bad. You won't defeat the Empire. But maybe you can kill Darth Vader. That kind of thing. And it's probably one of the best things that 3.5 put out. It was by Fantasy Flight. They had two. They had a first and second edition, but I just read something the other day, and my Google foo's failing me. I had seen where they were going to come out with a new version of Midnight, and I'm very, very interested in that, because it was a very good setting. I did not like 3 or 3.5, but I love the Midnight setting. I think I still have the source book. And
it was very well done. I still have the book, and the other one I liked from 3rd edition, it got killed with the switch to 3.5. was Dragonstar. I thought that was like a Spelljammer done right. And I'm not saying Spelljammer was bad, but Spelljammer is kind of campy, and my groups never fell into the campy world of gameplay. But whereas Dragonstar was Like, okay, we're gonna drain life essence to get this shit moving. Like,
here it is, Midnight Legacy. Okay, this came out article July 31st. Midnight Legacy of Darkness confirmed for D&D 5e. What if the bad guys won? Take a Lord of the Rings style setting. Imagine the Dark Lord and his army beat the humans, elves, and dwarves. This is the premise of the old D&D 3.0 campaign setting for Fantasy Flight Games. So apparently, this year they got out of the role playing business. Sister Studio Edge picked up the Star Wars license. Blah, blah, blah. Let me get to the good part here. So yeah, apparently there will be a third edition of Midnight, and it'll be for 5e. And so I'm interested. I don't play 5e, but I'd love to read the books and see what they've.
I would buy them in a heartbeat because, to be honest with you, and I'm going to, I guess, we'll segue for a moment here, but I run Swords and Wizardry, whether it's Swords and Wizardry Complete or Swords and Wizardry Light, Continual Light. Swords and Wizardry is my wheelbox. I can run it without referring to the books, but I find that I like DCC RPG adventures. I happen to like the system. My gaming group never did. It was too random, too swingy for them to be able to plan out in advance. But they like the adventures too. It works as if you're going to run an episodic drop in, drop out between sessions, it works great. It's kind of like doing a drama series on network TV. The way they used to be when we were younger. Like if you watched Magnum PI, you had a 2-part episode, but usually what happened early in the season, what happened later in the season, made no effing difference.
Right.
It wasn't. Yeah. But so DCC adventures, I would convert them on the fly, and I'm bringing it up because DCC is like that weird fantasy with those horror undertones, not overtones, but undertones going to it. So there's a dark aspect to it, and it's up on Humble Bundle right now. So for as little as $1, you can go in.
Well. There's
an affiliate link if you go to tenkarstavern.com, but I don't care if you do or don't use the affiliate link. Grab it for $1. I think you get like 10 or 11 adventures. For $8, you get like another 10 adventures and the rule book. I mean, geez.
And we talked about this before. You cannot go wrong with Humble Bundle. It's all winners.
Yes.
You donate to charity gets money. You get a lot of good stuff for very little cost. Everybody makes out. The Humble Bundle is a great way to get books. Good books cheap.
And you're not hurting Goodman Gaines by doing it.
No.
Because listen, they're selling PDFs. This isn't. They aren't selling hard copies here. These are PDFs, and yes, you're getting PDFs. Even if you win for like $15 or $18, you get like 40 adventures, and you're like, oh my god, it's like 50 cents an adventure. How are they making money on that? They're making money on it because they're going to sell probably 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 bundles.
Frog God does. We do Humble Bundles probably twice a year, and we're not losing money on it. We give stuff away cheap, but it works out great because everybody comes out ahead. Everybody comes out ahead.
And if all you do is use it for inspiration, you don't have to use it for DCC. I don't. All right, and I still think it's some of the better stuff out there. It's it's definitely a high production quality, and not for nothing, I love Doug Kovacs' artwork, and it's splashed all across the covers and inside and with the maps. So
yeah, somebody was telling me the other day that they're not a Kovacs fan. I'm like, what? I mean, how can you not be? This stuff's crazy, and it's evocative, and it reminds me a lot of the old artists that did some of the Ace paperback stuff way back in the 50s and 40s. I mean, it's all over the place. And I love Kovacs stuff. Doug's a great guy. But yeah, I don't know how you don't like Doug Kovacs' artwork. That's weird. But
well, Mike, I told you my first meeting with Doug, right, at North Texas.
You thought he was going to kill you. Yeah.
Because he's at the table.
Everybody's first meeting with him, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're sitting down for breakfast, and it's Rach and I, and Doug's at the table, like, next to us, and Doug gives me a nod, and Doug is he can be a man of many words, but he's also a man of few words. And in this case, it was like no words, just a nod. And then he's like, "You're a Tenkar." I'm like, "Yeah, yes." if I didn't already know you from your work, I wouldn't like you. I was like,
we all say that, Eric.
I was like, he goes, well, he goes, you're a fucking cop. I'm like, oh, all right.
That's where that came from.
Yeah, I was like, all right, okay, I'll grant you that, Doug. I'll grant you that. And there was another time, a couple of cons later, because now I would see Doug at North Texas and Game Hall, and we always sit down or stand and talk and catch up on stuff that's going on. And he was like, "Where's Rachel?" I'm like, "Oh, we're probably like Gary Conch. Rachel's probably spying." I'm like, she's doing a spy. He goes, "Oh, because I enjoy talking with you, but Rachel really listens."
Yeah, okay, Tenkar, but you're not going to disagree with that either. You're
no, he's right. Hell, Rachel's a social worker.
I was telling my daughter, my oldest daughter, who's living with us right now, who doesn't know your wife. I was telling her the story about Rachel's first trip to North Texas, which
my god,
where she'd never played games before, and then after 2 hours or 2 days, she's like, we're coming back here every year.
Yeah,
Yes, we got one.
Her first GM was Tim Schneider.
Oh, you can't go wrong with Tim. Yeah.
No, and her GMs that weekend were Tim Schneider, Doug Kovacs, Zach Glazer, and Matt Finch. And we were supposed to have Michael Curtis, but when we got to Michael's game, it was like Saturday night. We were like, just take it to the fucking bar. We were exhausted. But no, the actual big story about that first North Texas, and Rachel's going to be hearing this from the back, was when we reached that first night. We get there Wednesday night, and Rach decides that there's a pool here. We got to enjoy the pool. I'm like, okay, let's go enjoy the pool. So we go into the pool, and there's one other guy in the pool. And we're just waiting around, and Rachel's like, he's got to be here for the con. You should talk to him. But what am I going to say? He's like, he's like, I don't know, just talk to him. You're Eric Tenkar. I'm like, yeah, you play for the con? And he's like, oh yeah, I'm here. I'm here for the North Texas RPG Con. I hear Victoria laughing in the background. Yeah. So then he goes, I'm like, oh yeah, so she's like, well, yeah, we're here for the same thing. He goes, really? He goes, yeah. Yeah. And she points at me. He goes, yeah, this is Eric Tenkar. And he's like, huh? Who? You don't know? Like, you don't know who Eric Tenkar is? And he's like, no fucking clue. Where you been at? All right. So I said to him, I go, you don't read blogs, right? He goes, no. I go, Dragon's Foot? He goes, yeah. I do forums, Dragon's Foot and OD&D 74 and Knights and Knaves. I'm like, okay. And I said, tell me, this kind of, especially back then, it wasn't much of an overlap. I mean, yeah, you kind of went in, but not great. Yes, like Christopher Stodgill. Wait, if Rach is there, why is Eric talking? Hey, Rach and I do this together.
They do their own
Friday nights.
thing.
Yeah,
they have the health broadcast.
The Gamers Health on Friday nights.
Gamers Health.
Yes. So I had to explain to Rachel that yes, I might be known in the blog sphere, but in forums there are many that they don't.
Eric's not universally known as people. That's the thing that sometimes we have to get through our thick skulls is we hear some development in the gaming industry think, oh my God, this is just, this is going to blow the lid off everything. You go to a convention and 90% of the people don't know what you're talking about because we're part of this really small, group of people that read all the blogs and are really into the Facebook and the YouTube. And there's just most people in this hobby are not into all that stuff. And so they don't know when this happens. They don't know. I mean, I guarantee you, my brother, who's a huge Dragonlance fan, probably has a couple hundred. He probably has all 200 or whatever the books. I guarantee he doesn't know about this lawsuit.
And you never told him? You never told him about the lawsuit?
I think we played D&D last week, and I think I forgot to mention it. But he wouldn't know. I mean, most people are not going to know about the grisly details, and so a lot of times we think these things really matter, and they really don't matter that much unless you're just really into the industry like we are and just really plugged in.
And that's true. And you have to remember, Again, if you're listening to this on the podcast side or you're listening live on YouTube or Facebook, you are wired in. You are part of that group that knows what's going on, what moves the industry. You don't get surprised when a new release comes out. But this majority of gamers, they're not. And that's the thing, too. Wizards of the Coast forgets that. We forget it, but it doesn't affect our business, but Wizards of the Coast, it affects their business. When they go, oh my God, we have somebody on social media that's upset with Oriental Adventures and how it doesn't treat the Asiatic peoples properly. And you don't realize that you're getting a very aware segment of your fan base, but it's a very small segment of your fan base. And don't give it too much weight.
So we started out by talking about Halloween. We didn't really cover Halloween too much, as Eric and I will do, and we drifted around talking about hopefully it was interesting things. But so let me throw this out. So I told my Strahd story, which led to this long path. So what do you have any Halloween traditions when it comes to D&D? I mean,
apparently it's saying the three names that Chris has up on the screen in the mirror, and see something comes out of the mirror, kind of like Candyman. But
boy,
like I said, I used to run either something set in Ravenloft or something like Call of Cthulhu, but I haven't worried about that in years. I mean. And to be honest with you, Halloween, this time it falls on a Saturday, right? So, I could have done.
I think it's a pretty great day for Halloween. Yeah, if we didn't have COVID, it'd be a wonderful day for Halloween. But I don't know how many kids are going to be out there running around with COVID on the loose out there. So we'll see. I'm buying my candy anyway because I guess I'll just have to eat it myself if the kids don't come.
Gosh darn it!
With me being diabetic, that means like one piece every week. So a bag will last me about a year.
And you have to make sure it's like worth it. It's like you don't want to eat the candy corn.
No, this is good stuff.
Or the candy pumpkins, which are even worse than the candy corn.
So Eric, did you have that one? There's always that one neighbor that gives out full-size candy bars. We had that one. Oh my God. And that earned that neighbor any number of anything with us kids. We loved that. It was an old lady, and she would give out full-size Snickers, Milky Ways, whatever.
She was a shoplifter.
And we treated that old lady so good during the year. I mean, her lawn was never not mowed. Her leaves were never not raked. Everything, because they'd be like, oh, old woman, whatever, needs some help. Oh, we'll do it. We ran over there. I mean, because those full-size candy bars, and you didn't just have to take one. You grabbed she had like a bucket. You're grabbing a handful of full-size and shoving them in there. And yeah, she was, there's always that one that's just awesome. You're just like, all right, what the holiday is about, baby.
See, but Mike, here's the question for you. When you got home from trick-or-treating, did you have to dump that out in front of your parents?
No, we didn't do that. My parents were never paranoid about there might be a razor blade or I actually want to eat your candy. There wasn't.
No, the full-size candy bars would be gone.
No, they were pretty good about letting us eat our own candy, except just don't eat too much where you get sick. But no, we didn't have to do that. I know a lot of parents that do that now, which is pretty funny.
See, now John's trying to bribe a cop here. We were the house that gave glazed donuts to the 7 or 8 trick-or-treaters that would walk the quarter-mile drive to our house. Here, and that's good because they were glazed donuts. The problem with the powdered donuts, even the ones that were like the cinnamon powdered, is they got over your dark blue uniform and it really, really showed. But the glazed donuts, not a problem, so you can eat them.
Go to the cop if you want information about donut eating. This man is a professional. He could. I bet you knew all the best donut shops too on your beat, didn't you?
Here's the thing. There was a saying. And I first heard it when I was working as a cop in the South Bronx. Besides, a good cop is never cold, hungry, or wet, meaning that you always found a place, if you were on a foot post, a place to get warm, a place to eat, and a place to shelter in. But you also knew where to eat well or where to eat cheap. and the two very rarely went together. But you would know the best place in the command was like, all right, I know what I'm going to move for a chicken parm that will choke a fucking horse, and you'd pay. All right, back in 2002, I was paying $7 for a chicken parm hero.
Oh man!
But oh my god, I as a sergeant, I get back in my patrol car and I'd be telling my driver, dude, for the next half an hour, you got the radio. I'm not getting out of this car unless I have to. All right, you just answer Sergeant Stop because I need to like quasi hibernate right now. And also, you knew the places like the when I was a cop in the South Bronx. I was like, you go into your pocket, and you're like, oh man, I've got like $1.25 to have a meal. All right, well, where's that school bus that's parked on the abandoned lot where they make the Ecuadorian food out of somebody's like stew pot? But it was good. It was good food. I couldn't say if it would pass like a food inspector, but it was tasty and the price was right. So you learned them all.
Yeah, you never knew what was actually in there, but it tasted good.
But you also knew the places to go that weren't going to like spit in your food or put like
oh yeah,
if you went to certain places because you were desperate, you either went for something that was already like, if you went to McDonald's, you were already looking for stuff like, I hate the hamburgers, but they're already wrapped. I can see them on the shelf. Give me the hamburgers because I know it because I knew a highway cop that when I was in the South Bronx that he went to the McDonald's in our command, went in and got broken glass in his Big Mac.
Oh dear, yeah, that's not good.
So what we used to do in the late 90s, the whole deal was just before everybody had cameras at the drive-thru, was if you were going to go to Taco Bell, you went through the drive-thru because Taco Bell makes your food on order.
Right.
So you didn't want to go in and have possibly, locals from the command that maybe you arrested, or somebody wearing a uniform similar to yours might have put through the system. You don't want them making your food, knowing who it's going to go to. So you went to the drive-thru. Now I don't know what they do because drive-thrus have cameras. They know exactly. They probably have your license plate before you even come through. So.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Well, I like your idea of Call of Cthulhu. I'm going to have to think about a Call of Cthulhu game this Halloween. I had not thought about this. It might be too late to set something up, but I may roll something out.
Well, do you have the basic set yet? The new editions?
No, I'd have to be playing. We probably play an old, like maybe 7.0 or something. One of the. I mean, the thing about Call of Cthulhu, though, it's
hasn't changed much.
It's percentages. That's one great thing about every edition of Call of Cthulhu, except for the very last one, which they did change up quite a bit. You could play any of them with any rule set.
Yeah,
and you can play any adventure with any rule set, which I always thought was just a great feature of the game system. Was that there was really no game adventure that was ever really something you couldn't run. It was never like the change between D&D 2.0 to 3.0 or to 3.0 to 4 or 4.0 to 5 where you just couldn't even just run it as written. You had to do a lot of thinking on your feet.
I don't
based on percentages. It's
and
all
I don't know well enough to. I mean, the earlier editions, basic role playing editions. Yes, I could roll with that and convert between different editions of that stuff. And I ran RuneQuest 2nd edition. That was probably my longest running non-AD&D campaign was RuneQuest 2 with Pavis and Big Rubble, and it was just totally a sandbox. It was total sandbox with my players going through Big Rubble, and it was a blast. But that basic role playing it's a simple system that's very flexible. It worked with Call of Cthulhu and other stuff. But if you haven't Call of Cthulhu basic set for their latest edition, I believe it's $25. I got mine on Amazon. You get a full set of gaming dice. You get a solo. The only thing I got to say is that the covers of the booklets are cheap. They're not that thicker cardboard. That was my problem with the Avalon Hills RuneQuest 3. where your cover's folded over real easily, and then suddenly
Oh
look
yeah.
like shit. So it's also the one rule set where I actually returned an open product to my game store because I was like, this is a piece of shit. That was the Munster Coliseum. The most worthless release.
Yeah, everybody associated with that has to be embarrassed to this day. That was not a very good product. No.
Yeah, I actually brought it back, and my game store took it back. And when they closed, like 4 years later, it was still on the shelf.
It's still on the shelf because even collectors aren't going to buy that one. That was a bad one. That was a tough one. Yep.
So, well, yeah, we touched on Halloween, Mike.
Yeah, we didn't do a Halloween. Its duty, but we're old and we got COVID this year. We may have no trick or treaters. I'm kind of not really in the holiday spirit. I'm kind of bummed out because I love. My wife knows this. I love handing candy to trick or treaters because I love looking at their costumes. I love it when they have really imaginative costumes. I just love the look in the kids' eyes when they kind of come up. The little kid, and you just start putting candy in their thing, and they're and I just love the whole thing. So I'm kind of bummed out because it looks like we're not really going to have a Halloween this year, like everything else that got called off. So, unfortunately, not in the holiday mood. But we'll see how I feel next week. Maybe I'll have a good Halloween story to tell.
I mean, I have Halloween candy to give out, and I'm realizing that I'm not going to be standing at the door. I'm not going to wear my COVID mask and hand out shit to the little. So I'm going to put it out there, and I realize the only container I have is the disposable kitty litter container that hasn't been used yet. So that might actually be good for Halloween. It's like, Mommy, they put the candy in the cat's can.
I have a cat litter box. It's okay, kids. Just go ahead and eat it. There's probably
trapped, right? Yeah. There's no litter in it, right?
Oh, yuck. Yeah, I had a really nice big pumpkin container, and I think it broke. The handle broke off last year, so I got to look that up and see if I need to glue the handle on, or if I'll just totally be lazy and throw it in a plastic bag or something. I don't know, but I'm just not in the mood this year. I'm sorry. What can I say? Just not in the Halloween mood.
Well, hey, last year we were at Game Hole.
That's right. We missed Halloween. I have actually no. So last year, we left. We left for Halloween. No, that's right. We were at Game Hole. That's right.
We were at Game Hole on Halloween.
Yes.
They had trick or treating.
I forgot about that. Yeah, we had trick or treating for the kids. That was awesome. Alex that was a great idea, by the way, Alex Gamer. Yes, I forgot about that because 2 years ago I missed Halloween also because Zach and I left the next morning and I couldn't do anything that night. We had to pack up the truck to drive to Game Hole, and then last year they had Halloween and Game Hole. So you're right, and that was great. We had a great time at Game Hole. All the kids dressed up in costumes, and a lot of adults also, and everybody gave out candy. It was fun. That was really neat last year. I forgot all about that.
And now Game Hole is not this weekend; it's next weekend.
Next
right?
weekend,
virtual. And it's all digital, virtual.
Yep, virtual Game Hole will be going on next weekend. I'm sad to be missing it because Game Hole is a great con. And once again, we don't get to see all our friends, which sucks. So hopefully, in the next few months, we can get past this and move on, and we don't have to worry about all this distancing that's not allowing us to see our friends.
Well, knock on pressed wood. Or at least I think it's pressed wood. I hope it's something like pressed wood. Yeah, well, no, I don't know if your noggin is pressed wood. It's pressed something. In North Texas should be my return to conventioning. I think Gary Con's going to be too early for me, and just even at a reduced number of people, just too many people.
Unfortunately, I don't think we're attending Gary Con. Yeah, I don't think we are because it may be. I know Luke is taking a lot of precautions and they're just doing a great job about making sure that con is going to be as safe as possible for everyone. But for me, myself, I think it may be too soon. So
for me, it's too soon. And here's part of the issue is that unless you come with a car, you're stuck to eating at the venue, and that restaurant usually has
it's packed.
A 2-hour wait if you don't have reservations. Or even if you do sometimes. So there'll be no social distancing going around in the restaurant.
Well, we got 2 more months, 2.5 more months. Let's just write this awful year off. God.
Yes.
And I'm spending next month, I'm spending the whole month at the beach. So The rest of you can just suck it. Boom. And my wife and I are going to the beach, our annual vacation, and I'll be still doing Talking Crypt from the beach. So maybe I'll have a shot of the waves in the background as we.
Oh,
so,
nice! You're going to be out there in
Mm-hmm.
Speedos, Mike?
Oh, you bet, baby! I will definitely make sure we get that on tape so we can show everybody. But
yeah, no, we need you posing it because your brother posed. Come on.
Yeah, no, I don't do that. But
no.
But yeah, so we'll do that. So we have one more month, and then we'll be 2021, and God help us all. Hopefully, it will be much better here than this one, and we can start get back to conventions and all kinds of other fun stuff. And we'll see.
Bring a little bit of normality back to our lives.
Yeah.
Well, hey, talking about normality, at least this time next week we'll have a major day beyond us, folks. If you live in the United States, next Tuesday is Election Day. Many states have early voting. I know New York State does. Rich and I will probably go out early Friday and vote. Listen, Mike and I don't give a flying fuck how you vote, but vote.
I already voted.
There you go. Because you know what? If you don't vote, you have no right to bitch and complain.
Nope.
And don't say, well, I didn't vote because my vote doesn't matter. Well, you know what? If everybody said that, then guess what? You're right. Your vote wouldn't matter because nobody's voting.
Your vote does matter because I'll give you an example. If you don't think your vote matters in the presidential race, it matters in down vote. It matters in down races.
Yep.
Because last year in our city council, we had a city councilman lose by one vote, and I'm not joking.
Wow.
One single vote. They did a recount because there was only probably 400 votes total. It's cast the election, and they lost by one stinking vote. So your vote does matter when it comes. If you don't think it matters in national elections, it does matter when it comes to local city council, local representatives, local senators. So definitely, even if you don't like any of the candidates for president, go ahead and go vote and vote. And a lot of times, we had some ballot measures too this year about taxes and some other things to vote. It wasn't just president. We had a vote on some extra taxes and some funding the police department and some other things. So definitely go and vote. I went in. Look, if you pick a time of day when it's not that. I went at about 3:00 last week. Walked right in, got right out. 5 minutes. It was easy. I don't ever go the first day because it's tough. And honestly, I don't think election day is going to be that bad this year because so many people. We've had more people that have voted early than any time in history. So you may not be that bad election day. You may not have that very bad lines. So definitely go vote, folks.
And right before we close out the live stream, who pops in? But Joe the lawyer.
Bill, we need to have you on the show, dude. We need to set you up because these two morons here, me and Eric, are just spitballing about law issues, and we would love to have somebody that actually might know something about the law, so you can slap us down or give us a thumbs up.
Right, you can do it in the dark like Glenn does half the time, and it'll be like Deep Throat talking in the background. There we go. But yeah,
we also like to thanks Lloyd last week. Lloyd actually sponsored the show last week.
Yep.
You can sponsor the show if you want. If you sponsor the show, you get a lot of bonuses because Eric runs this thing called Tenkar's Tavern that has quite a big reach on Facebook and on his blog. So
just a wee bit of reach, and actually, I got to say the podcast. I want to think. I can't thank the audience enough. You've gotten the word out. When I can look at something 24 hours later and go, oh my God, over 600 people have listened to me, and who the fuck would want to do that? I mean, obviously, some people do. I appreciate it.
Let's look at this mug.
And listen, on Wednesdays, you can listen to Mike and I do this live. And you can abuse us in the chat.
Yeah. I'm loving this. I'm loving doing this live. I'm loving being able to see the comments as they come up. This is a great format.
Isn't this so much better than doing it on Discord?
Oh my gosh, so much better.
Listen, we enjoyed Discord, and we still do Thursday nights. We do a Discord hangout, 9:00 Eastern till about 11ish. Sometimes I usually bow out around 11ish. Sometimes it goes on to the wee hours in the morning, and God forbid Bill Webb gets on. You're gonna need to get coffee and booze just to make it through the night. But yeah.
So Chris Stodgel asks, how big a bottle does sponsorship cost? How much is sponsorship, Eric? I don't know this actually. It's probably pretty big bottle. I don't know.
It depends on the booze we're talking about, Chris. And it depends on whether or not you're a friend of the tavern. If I'll be honest with you, if the pricing, if you've been a supporter of the tavern, you get the friends and family discount. And listen, am I picky about the sponsorships I'll take? Yes, I'm not going to be like, well, we're coming out with a new D&D is porn RPG, and we'd like to sponsor your podcast. No.
Or if Mike Nistel wants to restart his Kickstarter.
Well, you know what? No. Let's since we've gone there.
Yeah.
Mike Nistel, I got to give Mike a lot of credit. The man fell on a sword. It's a rarity.
To this day, one of the few that have ever fallen on a sword. The rest of them have only had excuses, and it'll be coming out next year, 8 years later. So you're right. Mike did the right thing.
And Mike came out and said, "Hey, I am a horrible businessman. Nobody in their right mind should ever give me money again. Don't do it." And you know what? It takes a man to do that. Now, since we're on the topic, and it's like the longest fucking goodbye, Mike is. I'm gonna miss you, man.
We can't let this go. We just can't.
I posted about this on the blog. I'm going to have to mention this because, come on, you have to. Gareth Sharka, okay?
Oh, we did miss that. We got to talk about that next week. Oh, dear.
All right, but I'm just going to talk about Far West real quickly. So here's the deal. Gareth last year said, I'm not updating on Kickstarter anymore until I have something to release. If you want to talk about Far West, you got to go to my forums. There's only one problem with going to Gareth's forums. You can't fucking register for him because the registration bot is broken. Mm-hmm. Gee. So if you registered for it like 9 years ago when he first put it up, you can still talk to him. He might even answer you. So on August 19th, Dark, D-A-R-Q, writes, and he'd been having a conversation in this thread for years. So I now have terminal cancer. I'm sorry. I now have terminal cancer. I was wondering if I will see this before I die in the next year or so. So Gareth, I guess, needed some time to think about the answer because I know Gareth checks his Twitter account multiple times a day. He must look at the forums of his own game at least once a day, but he took 2 weeks to respond September 4th. Dark, I am so sorry to hear that. I expect to deliver by the end of this year. So that's nearly 2 months ago. Right? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And we haven't had another update. So, either Gareth is the most evil individual that I have ever known, which is one possibility. Two, it could be that Dark is not terminally ill. I don't know. I don't know this guy Dark personally. And Gareth is giving a stroke job to blow him off. And trying, but I personally, I would not bet my pension, even if you gave me like 10-1 odds. Like, hey, Gareth says he's gonna have it done by the end of the year because he told a dying man he's gonna have it done. Are you willing to bet your pension and get 10-1 returns on it? You'd be wealthy. And I'd be like, nah, 10-1 odds, 100-1 odds. I'm still not doing it. Because Gareth, this is like another Gareth promised date. And then Gareth's to come back with, well, I was doing it under the OGL as a D20 system. And then I went to Open D6. But I understand that basic role-playing now has an open system. And I think the percentile system for basic role-playing, I think that this will work even better. So the new release date is going to be 2023, and hold me to it.
I can't even speak about this subject; it's so ridiculous. So, we'll talk about it next time. I'm going to do a little more research, but it's just
Well, here, when you do the research for that one, I'm gonna throw another one at you. If we're gonna research that one, if we're gonna discuss that, then we have to discuss somebody else who's pulled a fast one, or I'm gonna give a release date that's so far out in the future. There's no way I'm ever gonna miss it.
I can't possibly miss this day. Yeah,
I can. There's no way in hell. The date is a joke. It's a joke. What do you? How many years ago did I miss it? James Raggy the fourth.
That's already. Oh yeah, that's not good.
Yeah. I backed it, and I'm not saying that James hasn't put out other stuff in the meantime. He certainly has, and I'm not saying he hasn't put out good stuff in the meantime. He certainly has, but I apparently was one of many that gave him a nice huge loan that has yet to come through.
Mm-hmm.
So, James, if you're hearing this, you're going to come back with the. I have to give the obligatory social media update because it's been requested. Yeah, I'm calling you out. I'd like to know what's going to happen with the shit that I paid for.
Or just come on the show. We'll talk to you. I'm a big fan of James.
I like James too.
We like James a lot.
We had a Google Hangout one night when I was back in the early days of Google Hangouts. I don't know how. I guess we made it an open hangout. So all of a sudden, as we're gaming, who pops into as we're wrapping things up? It's like 2:30 in the morning, New York time. It's fucking Raggy. Jumps in, starts talking with my gaming group. We're all talking stuff and finally, like 5:30 in the morning, I'm like, dude, I gotta get up, and my wife's gonna be up in like 2 hours. I need to go. It's gonna take me 20 minutes just to unwind at this point. But James has written
every reaction I've ever had with the guy has been fine.
Yeah, so. He's written some of the best material out there, published some of the best material out there that wasn't even written by him, and he's also published some beautiful looking unusable track. Monolith, I'm looking at you. We started with you. We're ending with you.
That's a good one. Let's do it circular. We started with Monolith. Let's end with Monolith.
There you go.
Thanks everybody. We appreciate you watching us.
Yes, folks. World of the pandemic. Use your common sense. Neither Mike nor I or medical professionals. Just look at us.
Please vote.
Please vote.
Week, by the end of the week, please vote. Or next week.
Be safe. Be safe. Be well. God bless. Roll the dice. And Mike and I will be back tomorrow. God willing, and knock on wood, I should be back tomorrow. All right, folks.
Later.
And